How does adding Carson Beck change the Miami Hurricanes' expectation for 2025?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday, if there is such a thing. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. On this loaded episode, we'll talk with our special guest about scouting Miami Hurricanes prospects. You've got, the signees who are now on campus, class of 2025 guys, some class of 2026 recruits that the Miami Hurricanes are after. There's actually a Florida Gators commitment who's going to be visiting Miami this weekend for Junior Day. Can we make that Armwood to the U connection even more powerful? But we want to talk about Carson Beck because the Miami Hurricanes made their blockbuster addition late last week, adding the former Georgia Bulldogs starting quarterback who's got a 24-3 record in 2 seasons as a starter. He is now a Miami Hurricane, and we have the privilege of being joined by, it's been way too long since we've had the recruiting overlord, Brian Smith, with us. So, Brian, at Miami, of course, losing Cam Ward to the NFL, an uncertain quarterback outlook until a few days ago. We were all wondering, hey, next year, does the team maybe take a big step back to try and build up their next quarterback, possibly an Emory Williams? What happens? So Miami goes out there and makes the biggest splash available. I mean, Carson Beck, now the number 1 rated transfer in the portal. They bring him down to South Florida. How does that change the expectation in your mind for the Hurricanes next season?
Well, I mean, nobody outside of like me and a handful of people that have seen Emory play very much at like the high school level know much about him because he's barely played for Miami. So, I mean, a guy that's been on a national title team, yeah, it's going to go up. Obviously, the question, how much does he assimilate to the offense and how healthy is he through spring and all that? That second part is the big one for me because it's not just the physical, Alex, it's the mental. That was an awkward injury. When I watched that again, I was like, oh, wow. He's closest thing for a college football quarterback is being a pitcher. And a lot of pitchers, even after they're healthy, they don't want to throw the curveball and some of those things. He's got to be able to take hits. How does he do that? But if he can, because it's been proven, this is a team that can win 10 games next year or more if he's totally dialed in with the offense.
Yeah, I mean, should that be the expectation would be to try to accomplish what Miami fell short of this year, and that would be, right, getting to the ACC championship game and potentially getting to the CFP. Now, I know that the rebuttal would be, well, hey, look, Cam Ward was incredible, and Miami couldn't get to the ACC championship with him. I think there's no question other parts of the team need to improve. It's why Miami just hired a new defensive coordinator, Corey Hetherman, and why they're adding defensive players. But, I mean, I would say, Brian, Miami's intent is there to try and accomplish this coming season, getting to that ACC title game, getting to the CFP, those goals that they fell short of in 2024.
Why not? Miami's roster is now to a point, especially in the trenches, where they can compete with anybody. Of course, the point you're getting towards there on that other part is the secondary's got to get immensely better. There's no nice way to say it, but Carson Beck doesn't play corner. He doesn't play nickel. He doesn't play safety. So if they go score 35 points a game and they don't make it, don't point at Carson Beck. He can only do so much for his job. And I think at times it probably impacted Ward. He'll probably never say anything about it, but some of the throws or decisions that he made, he's like, we got to score because I know we ain't stopping nobody. Especially at the back half of the season, like that game against, you're up 21-0, and that defense couldn't do anything. I mean, it's terrible. At some point, the defense has got to win you games. Carson Beck, obviously playing at Georgia, had some of those luxuries, but Miami's front seven's pretty good. Now they got to find a way in that secondary because I think he could throw for 3,000 yards. Why not? He's done it before. Miami has plenty of running game to help him with play action, and he's very good at it. I think Miami got a good pickup.
Let's pick up more on that, on Carson Beck as a quarterback, Brian. Could you give me, and you mentioned a couple things there, what he does well, expand on that, and also, any limitations. He did have 12 interceptions this past season. So let's talk about Carson Beck, the quarterback.
The biggest thing with him is when he presses, he really presses. For anybody that's interested to see him like go in the tank, it's weird because Georgia's defense dominated in this game. But when they played the game at Texas, he had 3 picks and they still won. That's the terrible recipe, but their defense had 7 sacks. You can't count on that. I mean, Georgia's front seven is ridiculous, but he played very poorly against some zone coverage, some post-snap reads where things changed. Georgia's defense is complex. So against teams that just play man or basic cover 2, I think he'll carve them up. It's just like anything else. Can he take this step up when he goes against teams that are switching the coverage after the snap or show some looks that he hasn't seen before? It seemed to bother him in that Texas game. And their defensive coordinator is fantastic. They took Jeremiah out of the game against Ohio State. He had 1 catch for 3 yards. That
right.
defense for Texas is legit. But at the same time, if you're going to compete, you got to go through the schedule. They're going to play Florida again, et cetera. They're going to play some good teams. They have to be able to rely on him not to turn it over. The good news is, I don't know how this is possible. Georgia's run game this past year was garbage. That should never be the case at Georgia. Miami's run game, especially with a balanced offensive line, good running backs, I don't have any fear that Mirabal will figure out the O-line for the next season. He should be doing what he does best the most, and that's play action and throwing in situations where he's not behind the chains. It should be 2nd and 5 a lot for the U, and Beck is an accurate quarterback.
Yeah, so, you talked about times that Beck didn't play great as a Georgia Bulldog. Usually the defense was there to pick him up, and Miami is trying. You talked about Miami's defensive secondary. The Hurricanes are trying to revamp that defense. They've already added 4 defensive backs in the transfer portal. They've added a new defensive coordinator, and I'm going to read you guys something that Kane Sport posted on social media that I think is going to make us like Corey Hetherman even more. And hopefully, of course, this all translates to success on the field. But Miami's new defensive coordinator, according to Kane Sport, and I agree with this based on what we've surmised, he keeps schemes simple, which should help a Miami group that too often was running around confused in 2024. Hetherman's agenda for opposing offenses is also simple. Quote, "We want to give them no hope right from the very start of the game." Okay, fair enough. But I'd like to ask you, Brian, last season, which, didn't go well defensively under Lance Guidry. I mean, how much of that for you was on the scheming and the coaching? Because it's always some of both, right? But how much of it was on the coaching versus the personnel?
I found it last year to be one of the most confusing things ever. And you and I had talked about this on and off air. Like the truth teller and I talked about this on and off air. We didn't understand why the secondary regressed so much because they brought in the DB coach from Marshall that he'd worked with when they were great. They were good the year before, and they got worse with even a better staff. I thought it was more personnel, which I know fans don't ever like to hear because it's a lot harder to pick the personnel part and make it better.
Right.
But at the same time, there were just situations where there was nobody within 10 yards of players. It just bust after bust. That Syracuse game, for the love of mankind. So I don't know, man. My question for you is, for Miami's defense to be what it should be, do they have a guy on the roster at corner that can man up and take away another team's best player now, Dabari has been banged up. I don't know what his circumstance is.
Damari,
and I'm sure that's a big question going into spring ball for the Canes. It should be. But did they get anybody else that they think can be a number one corner? Flat out an NFL player. If the answer is no, then they're not going anywhere. That is the number one thing they've got to do, because you look at the teams that made the Final Four, they all have multiple NFL corners.
Yeah.
It's the difference. And there's only so many of those guys. So we'll see in spring ball, but they certainly put their money where their mouth is in the portal. They're trying to bring in good players. So I ask you, which one of those guys do you have the best feel for?
I like Ethan O'Connor, who they added in the portal. They also added Charles Brantley, who's got a lot of experience. Emmanuel Carnley from Arizona, who didn't have the best grades last year, but was a freshman very long. And, to really the first name that popped in my head when you asked that question, knowing he still needs development, but I'm hoping OJ Frederick can be that guy. He showed signs of it as a true freshman, Brian. Now, he didn't have a very good game against Syracuse. I thought they did kind of a good job exposing him a little bit. But again, true freshman, he played well throughout the year. I'm hoping OJ Frederick can continue to be that guy and become that guy more consistently, that he gets a little bit older and more mature.
Well, I think from what it sounds like, they're going to be a little more aggressive, a little more man, maybe not as much complex. But Frederic is a guy that has so much physical skill. I don't doubt that. The other guy that I'm curious about is Patterson. I think him being in the back end of the defense, year two, freshman safeties, it's a struggle. And Zaquan's one of my favorite recruits of the last several years. I think he will take a major step forward for Miami. And that also means helping guys. If you're a really good safety, you're helping guys get lined up when teams run bunch formations, when they use a lot of shifts. That stuff is not fun, but you got to learn that. It's more off the field work with film and chalkboard and guys talking, because what teams are trying to do is get busted plays. Somebody with motion and stuff, and then somebody scot-free. And Miami seemed to give up too many of those this past year, so they got to fix that. But we'll see. I mean, it can't be worse. There's no way you're going to tell me Miami secondary is going to be worse in 2025. No way.
I mean, that was probably the worst I've ever seen it. I've been watching Miami football since the late 80s. Well, I want to actually there's another defensive player I want to ask Brian about who may end up transferring to Miami if he can actually get his release from Wisconsin. And I want to ask Brian about a certain Florida Gators class of 2026 commit who's going to be visiting the U this weekend. Miami's going to try and pull off a flip. We have so much more to talk about. We got the recruiting overlord with us. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Tax season is upon us, my friends. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. Now, Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. All while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now this is Taxes, Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For your next listen, also, make sure, I know obviously a lot of people watching this are probably not big fans of Florida State, but Brian does an awesome job on Locked On Seminoles, so make sure you check him out there. He does a great job on the Locked On Podcast Network. So Brian, when we're talking about defensive backs, there's been this saga going on in Madison, Wisconsin, because Xavier Lucas, South Floridian, American heritage, who had a really good freshman season up there in Wisconsin. He declared for the transfer portal, but up to this point, Luke Fickell has, refused to file his paperwork. Apparently something about a new NIL deal that he signed over there, even though, you can't hold a guy hostage because of an NIL deal, because that's separate from the transfer portal. But I mean, assuming Lucas is at some point gonna get freed up from his Wisconsin situation, it seems like Miami could be a strong option for Lucas. I mean, this is a player I would assume you covered in high school. I mean, if Miami is able to land a player like Xavier Lucas, what could he add to that defensive backfield?
Well, he's the long and athletic corner that everybody wants. I was surprised that, quite frankly, Miami didn't go after him harder earlier. I thought that was one of the guys they didn't evaluate the way they should have.
They got in late on that one, yeah.
And he's a kid at American heritage. That can't happen, but it is what it is. He had a good year, and if he ends up at Miami, I think he's a guy that could compete for a starting job. He's 6'1 plus. He can change directions really well, and he's also got proven production. Those are things you're always looking for. So I don't know a whole lot about the contract situation, but I've been told there's some money already exchanged and it's spent already. Like, it's very convoluted. That's not going to end well for anybody. So it is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So another one, and now we move forward into the class of 2026 here. Jaylen Seatbelt Waters is a great nickname, 4-star cornerback out of Armwood High School. So he's I'm assuming very close with Kellen Wiley and Gerard Pringle from Armwood, who are enrolling in Miami this year. But Jaylen Waters is a Florida Gators commit for the class of 2026. And I come to find out he's going to be visiting Miami this weekend for Junior Day, and it seems like Miami is trying to flip this player. I mean, any insights on how solid he might be with the Gators, and what would Jaylen Seatbelt Waters bring to the table if Miami can pull off a flip before next year?
This is one of the best cornerbacks in the class of 26. Again, he's a lot like Xavier Lucas. Length, athleticism, change of direction. He has all of those things, and that's why he's got all the offers. He's probably one of the top 10 corners conservatively in that class. I expect his recruitment to be a very back and forth battle because obviously Florida's got NIL as well. This will be wild. This could be one of the wilder recruitments in the state of Florida, which is saying something within itself for this cycle. And Miami and Florida don't like each other much anyway, so it probably adds a little fuel to the fire. But Miami needs corners. It's not maybe kind of, they flat need it. It's not even debatable. But so does Florida. Like their secondary stinks too. So they both don't have leverage with the kid. I'm curious how this will end up. But Florida's got him now. Do they keep him? Well, he's visiting Miami, so it's not a lock by any means.
I got you. All right, so let's go back to 2025 now. We step back in that DeLorean time machine. A player who I think has just arrived probably yesterday on campus after really being a top star at Navy All-American Bowl. Miami defensive end signee, edge rusher Hayden Low, who is going to be a true freshman this coming season at Miami. And I hear all these sterling reports from how he just performed this past week at a big all-star game. What should Miami fans expect is we're looking at young pass rushers, how certain guys are going to step up. Hayden Low is going to be at Miami this season. What can fans expect from him?
This is a guy that moves like a tight end or a big flex receiver, but he's over 250. His athleticism and footwork is just absolutely tremendous. Big steal to get Lowe out of the state of California. And to be honest with you, it wouldn't shock me if I know Miami has good defensive linemen, but if he played as a freshman in pass rushing situations or as just a depth piece, it would not surprise me at all. He's a top 100 talent, very conservatively, and he takes his craft very serious. The trainers and stuff that he has, I've seen some of the videos on his X handle. What an athlete and what a competitor. Miami fans are going to like Hayden Low a lot.
It's someone who's going to be hitting his second year that I think I probably sleep on too much because I don't talk about him enough. And, in the limited playing time that he got as a true freshman, he was able to preserve his red shirt. Picket Jr., who's going to be entering his second year at Miami. This is someone I can recall watching him at all-star games a year ago and absolutely dominating. I think he played in 2 of them last year. Pickett, do you think Booker is someone who could really become a force off the edge? Probably won't start, but I would imagine is going to get some meaningful downs this year.
I believe so. I spoke to Canon Picket over the weekend, and he said Book is up to 225, 230 in that range. He's where he needs to be. And I think playing the run was the biggest reason he didn't get more reps last year. Taking on offensive tackles is not easy for guys under 220. And now that he's got a year of experience, technique's better, definitely going to play more, and especially 3rd and 6. Look, sometimes you don't have to hide what you're going to do. When he's lined up wide in a 7 technique, he is not fun for an offensive lineman or especially a tight end. He'll eat those guys alive. Miami's got to find a way to get him on the field. Maybe it's a blitz package. Maybe it's the nickel or dime. I don't know, but he is way too athletic, especially, again, year through the training system and getting bigger, faster, stronger, and he's going to have a new defense. We'll see how they use him, but if it's a simplistic package is what they're supposedly preaching, then Pickett should definitely play.
You mentioned you talked to Canon Picket, his younger brother. You also scouted him this past week. So Canon Picket, class of 2026 offensive lineman. I'm sure he's not committed anywhere yet, but I know Miami is strongly in the mix for Canon. Do you think the Hurricanes are in the driver's seat there for Booker's brother? And how have you seen Canon improving over the past couple of years?
The schools involved are the heavy hitters. Michigan's a school to watch with him. Miami. It just kind of depends on his visits. Right now, he's up over 300 pounds. He's going to drop a little weight before the season. But he was playing left tackle at the 5-on-5 event I was at in Orlando this past weekend. And he was the best offensive lineman there as a tackle. And probably by a pretty good margin. There were several Power 4 guys there. I just think he's improved so much technically. He trusts his technique a lot more than he did last year. And it's why he's so heavily coveted. Like Michigan doesn't have to come down to Florida to recruit kids on the offensive line. And they obviously have had a tremendous line for several years. So that's a good sign. I don't know when he's going to announce. I was talking to him about it. Like he had a Gator sweatshirt on when he was walking. It was cold, and I was giving him a hard time about it. And he's like, it doesn't really matter. He just whatever's next on the pile. It's one of those kind of deals. It could have been a Miami or Oklahoma or anything else, but he is pretty open. But Miami is a school that he visits all the time, and his brother's there. That's a pretty tight knit family. I would not be surprised at all if he ended up playing for the University of Miami.
Well, I want to talk when we come back about one of the top players in the class is at Chaminade Madonna. I mean, what a talent factory that is. Where is Miami in the mix for Derek Cooper? I want to talk about that and so much more with Brian Smith. Also, I want to ask Brian, because we're talking about Carson Beck, his one and done season with Miami coming up. Are there any true freshman receivers, because Miami landed a trio who might be able to step up and contribute in their first year? You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked on Canes. We're nowhere near done yet with the Game Time app. Guys, I've already been getting these great deals in 2025. And I love buying tickets on the Game Time app because you're getting the best prices. They make it so easy. They've got the best features. And then you go to sporting events and concerts with your family. It brings everyone together. It really is a beautiful thing. And yeah, you can buy tickets to the college football playoff final, and you're going to get the best prices. You want to enjoy the final college game of the 2024 season now being played in 2025. You need to check this out because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier because it filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, I love the all-in pricing feature on Game Time. It shows you the total up front with no hidden fees and no surprise fees at checkout, so you know exactly what you're paying. And something else that I really appreciate about the Game Time app is you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So sometimes you may think, hey, this ticket looks good, and then you look at the panoramic view, not so much. So you get to see all of that on the Game Time app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making Locked on Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked on ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I take you around the conference. We've been, trying to dunk on the SEC a little bit for, not fulfilling those promises of national champions. We've been having a good time. We got Brian Smith with us, the recruiting overlord. So, Brian, a top 25 player in the class of 2026 is, some call him a running back, some call him an athlete, some call him a linebacker. I would say D, all of the above. Derek Cooper from Chaminade Madonna. So Miami offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson and running backs coach Matt Merritt recently paid a visit to him. I also see, of course, big hitters in the mix for him. Ohio State, LSU, Florida, Auburn are very much in the mix with Miami. Some consider Miami to be a slight trending favorite with a lot of time left to go. I mean, any insight on how Derek Cooper's recruitment is going? And let's also talk about how this guy can make an impact at potentially multiple different positions.
Yeah, there's a lot of run on what position he should play. Myself and some other people prefer that it's linebacker, but it is what it is. The kid prefers running back, which is common. Kids like to have the ball in their hands. And when I was at Under Armour a little over a week ago, he was really good. And even though he was an underclassman, he was one of the best players there, regardless of position. Changes directions well, has power to get through tackles inside. He, quite honestly, is a lot like some of the running backs that Miami has had in the last couple of years. Breaks tackles and has pretty good speed if he gets to that second and third level. And finally, he's just a guy that loves contact. He fits what Cristobal and that offense want to be. So I understand why they're recruiting. As far as teams, watch out for Georgia. If I had to pick one, that would be the team. They've been on him forever. At one point, he committed there. That was the school he rooted for, etc.
That's right.
But Miami is right there, too. And this isn't going to be a quick recruitment. This is going to be another typical South Florida drawn-out recruitment. So we'll probably be talking about him in November, would be my guess.
Oh, man. Fair enough. All right. So let's circle back to, Carson Beck. And I think there still could be another weapon or two to be added in the spring transfer portal, because a lot of the buzz has been obviously Miami landed Beck late in the process with the winter window already being closed for most players. I'm already seeing chatter that, hey, there could be certain big name receivers who may want to follow Beck to Miami in the spring. Miami had already landed CJ Daniels from LSU, who should be a very nice target for him. I expect JoJo Trader to take a big step forward this coming season. Elijah Lofton at tight end. Miami also landed Alex Bauman Bauman from Tulane to play tight end this coming season. What about the guys that are coming in, Brian? Joshua Moore, Dalen Upshaw, Malachi Toney coming in as true freshmen. We didn't see a lot of burn for true freshman receivers in 2024 at Miami. Could any of those guys in 2025 change that narrative? Anyone you could see getting on the field this year?
I think it's difficult in today's game to be a freshman that makes a big impact because they're asked to block in the screen game. They're usually not strong enough yet.
Right.
And then the offense, you still got to pick it up. It's a lot of stuff to figure out. But just from a physical standpoint, I could see possibly Malachi Toney getting involved in the punt return game. Like, he's so twitchy. And Joshua Moore is physically the imposing boundary receiver that Miami has struggled to sign out of the high school ranks. That guy is humongous, 6'3", 210, 215. He's got the physical traits that you're looking for. If I had to guess, it'd be him, but I think that now they got CJ coming in, they'll probably use him in a bevy of different ways. I'm curious to see who ends up at the boundary. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But if Moore played the most, it wouldn't surprise me. But again, freshman receivers, man, that's rough. I'd still look at JoJo and Nike Carr taking steps forward. That would be more, maybe Ray or somebody else. But freshman receivers, that's hard.
Yeah. What else? I'm sure you covered Chance Robinson at St. Thomas Aquinas. Didn't get much burn this year as a true freshman, but do you think this could be a guy who can take a step?
Absolutely. Chance can fly. He's really strong. I mean, the kid's built like a boxer. He's put together like you'd want a football player to be. He's healthy, I assume now, and he's probably ready to roll. This is a very big spring for really all the second-year wide receivers at Miami. They all want to get on the field more. Well, they lost a lot of production, so now it's time to see what happens. I'm sure you'll be talking about that a lot.
Yeah.
And you should. If Miami's receiver room takes a major step back, they're not going to reach their goal. So that'll be a really interesting topic.
That's fair. Well, excellent job as always, Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord. Make sure you follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. Brian, thank you so much for the time and enjoy. Are you traveling anywhere, scouting anybody this week, or is this kind of a week off for you?
I'm probably not. I'm getting ready to start another channel here on the Locked On Network. Locked On Recruiting and NIL. So
yes, let's go. I've been hoping for something like that. Yeah. What an announcement to get here. How did I not know about this?
I don't know. It just happened a couple of days ago, but
that's awesome.
Just trying to prepare that and start working on top 100 lists and things like that. It's a lot of backlog. It's a lot of work.
Oh, well, you're in your bag, my friend. I'm looking forward to that. Brian Smith, make sure and we'll keep you guys up once we get all the official announcements on what that's going to look like. We'll have it for everybody here on Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.